morning from Easier Habits. I'm Alec, and this is Meg.
Hi.
And today we're going with sometimes simple is the best solution. So we don't have a complicated new strategy. It's more of prioritizing the work for the week. So we'll go through that. But first, a communication tip.
Yay! As you can hear, I still have a little bit of gunk left over from last week, but I'm doing better. Okay, so for the communication tip, this is one that I'm still kind of struggling to work on. So I guess, it's worth mentioning, but it's the idea of the level of engagement that you will, or the level of effort, I guess, required for different types of engagement and the relative priority of those. So to put this in kind of more concrete terms, obviously you meet lots of people at networking events, and it's good to follow up with a message, or an email or something like that. But the level of effort and the depth of that message is not going to be the same as what you might offer, like a good friend or family member or something like that. And this is something I struggle with, in that I am very much focused on whatever is happening at that moment, or kind of in my most immediate space, to the potential neglect of more important interactions that don't happen to be there at the time.
So you're trying to make the most out of that interaction and squeeze the most out of that follow-up, even though following up with that individual person may not actually be worth a very intimately crafted message.
Yeah, so it's kind of both. So it's you only have so much time and attention to spend on the relationships in your life. Everybody is limited, right, by time, and we all have the same amount. Or at least at any given moment, right? We have the same, 167 hours or something like that in a week? I can't remember. Or 168. And so you have to evaluate the relationships in your life and prioritize those and the amount of effort that you put into them at any given point, right? To maximize, yes, the value that you're able to, I don't want to say extract, but, engage with each of those, right? Giving and taking, as well as, being efficient in your, I guess, time and attention spending on those relationships. I know this is super abstract. There's a specific thing in my mind that I'm thinking about, which I don't really want to go into right now, but it's, I guess, related to, having focused so much on business and work and trying to get better. There are certain, relationships in my life that I've kind of ignored. And one of those people messaged me yesterday being like, Meg, are you okay? Are you mad at me or something like that? There's something going on here. And I'm like, oh gosh. Right. So it's the, keeping all of those parts of your life balanced at the same time, and still being able to do that work, because the work I'm doing is important right now, right? As are those relationships. And so making sure I can find a way to balance that attention.
So it sounds a little bit more like being able to triage your relationships.
Yeah.
And having a plan for each category, right? So that, so it's easy to spend a lot of time, for example, just on your current clients, right? But if you don't, for instance, spend time on prospective clients, and then, even the broader community to get to know you, who might become prospective clients, getting that funnel available, for example. But then, it's not just the funnel. It's, do you have regular time to invest in peer networking and relationships and etc.
And how much effort you're spending on cultivating those relationships, right? That is really kind of at the core of the communication that you will engage with those people in. So, are you like thinking of, super personalized messages for every one of them, which then means that you can't get to all of them at the same time, right? Or are you doing the reverse and kind of doing a copy paste message to everybody, which then fails to achieve the level of engagement that they're expecting or wanting from that relationship? And so making sure that you match that level of effort and everything to the relationship, as well as balancing it with the time and resources you have in general.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of like 3 buckets. So
right?
however you bucket your time, 3 to 5, right, is the core amount that people typically remember or is manageable in your brain. Writing things out is like actually writing out a plan or a schedule, or like have reminders so that you don't have to keep it in your head.
Yep.
Those are all really helpful things when you've got to contact a lot of people and you don't know who to talk to or when.
Yeah, because I also have like a backlog of messages that piled up while I was sick, right?
Yeah.
Most of them birthday messages, but I still haven't sifted through them to see if there's anything that's not birthday related that I actually like need to be looking at. I've gone to to my work email and everything and spent the time there to make sure that I've gotten that checked through, but not my instant messages on various platforms, right? And so, am I potentially leaving an interaction to kind of stagnate because I've been prioritizing other communication?
Well, and some of them are. So that's where it's like you have to spend enough time communicating so you know where you get the most value, because like inherently you are going to have to leave some things on the table, right?
Exactly.
But like you want to be making sure that you prioritize your interactions with not only where you're going to get the most value, but also where you're going to give the most value.
Yep. And so the communication tip really is like, be aware of those differences and how you're spending that attention, because there are times when you do need to leave things, to the side, and other times when you ought not do that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, this week, I thought a kind of return to just the simple framework of what are your top 3 priorities. And we'll probably do that outside of this, just day by day, all right, what are our top 3 priorities tomorrow, and have that, have that check in so that when it comes time to work, we're ready to go rather than trying to figure out what our top 3 priorities are the next day.
Yep.
But for the week, broadly speaking, what are your top 3 priorities?
Yeah. And I, get into this with, oh my goodness, I'm already super overwhelmed because I am now 2 weeks away from going to Japan, which means that there's a part of my brain that's going to be thinking about that regardless of whether I need to actually do anything about it or not. But it's one of the things that my brain does, if I have an appointment in the afternoon, I obsess about it all day. I can't not think about the appointment and everything leading up to it.
Well, and that's something to point out when you plan travel is it's not just the 2 weeks that you're affected by that.
Yes, exactly. And so it's one of the reasons why I've been really proactive recently about the prioritizing. So, I kind of preface this with that so that I can make sure to really get those priorities done and to set the time aside to be more effective there. So my priorities really right now, number 1 obviously is the continued marketing and getting clients, which means, right, I have to kind of think about, okay, well, what does that actually look like actionably? Continued outreach is one of the things. I need to go through that kind of backlog of stuff that piled up while I was sick, so that I can make sure I don't have any, leads just kind of waiting somewhere. And then finishing my next lead magnet and funnel is going to be my other priority, because as I've done this work with, I guess even before that, as I've done the work with our wonderful marketing consultant, it's become very clear that I need to define my packages and the expected results from each of those, and then have some type of funnel that points specifically to those. So I need to define those packages, their pricing, and make that in a super easy to consume format, which again, I have in various places, but not in one nice, beautiful place.
Is that part of the first priority of marketing or its own separate thing?
Well, and that's the thing. For me, it's all interconnected, and that's why I have you to help me to kind of like parse it apart.
All right.
So I need to have that defined, right? What are the packages? Because I need something for people to buy, right? I need something to market in order to, actually, or to warrant doing the marketing, if that makes sense. So defining what that is, I guess, is the simple thing.
Right, because you can throw money in ads, but if your offer isn't interesting to people at the end of the day, it's you're going to be wasting that money. So
that.
All right, so I mean that sounds like one of the most fundamental things. So like that sounds like your marketing priority.
Yeah. So that is the priority. Yeah. Like when kind of looking at it from kind of the wider perspective. So that's the priority, and then secondary to that, and I'm always like, and talking to people, but no, that's the priority. Then talking to people, and then I would say working on my next funnel to get people towards that. So whatever those offerings, the content, like that daily content that I'm wanting to be doing, continually. So that would be priority number 3.
Sounds good. All right, so my priorities for the week, and again, like the overarching priority right now, right, would be because we've been trying to go our own separate ways and split our attention, doing too many things, not well enough. My priority is our collective priority is getting this to work in the next 6 months.
Yep.
So for me, a lot of that there's already the kids stuff. And I think there will be some times while they're at school, I'll do grocery shopping or something like that. So that will, in a sense, I will have a priority probably because what I want to do every day is check to make sure that's done. But for most of my work day, I won't have to be, this while they're at school and stuff like that. I won't have to be focused on that.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be brushing up my technical portfolio. Would be one of those things because it's out of date. And that the other piece would be outreach, and I think a third piece that I'd be doing would just be research into interesting companies, kind of the Hail Marys, right? Like because you can always do job searches for postings that there are that look good enough or something like that, but I think we talked about this a while ago about the mathematics of being the asker versus the askee.
Yep.
Right. But that in dating, some crazy mathematician had done the proof that you come up with better matches if you are the person who gets to ask people on dates versus you're a person who only gets to accept or not. And in a certain sense, right, if you're only going for the jobs that other people are asking you to do and you're saying, yeah, we'll apply to that or not, you might not end up with the ultimate, the best match of a job. And so it's been in my mind that I do want to try and discover a few companies or educational institutions doing interesting things right now, and then apply to them whether or not they have a particular position for me, with a pitch of this is what I'd like to do for your your company or institution. And so that's kind of a third priority, and partially because that's a risk analysis for me. Maybe if that worked fantastically for me regularly, I would bump that up. But that's for the most part, I have either gone through recruiters because I regularly still get recruiters for coding and other jobs, and apply to jobs that I already see on the market. So but those are 3, and the purpose of all of those is to be able to replace the time that I'm focusing on marketing right now with cash flow, and then be able to invest that cash flow into marketing with you, where I'm also learning how to market better. And the whole idea is after we've invested in you and gotten your marketing machine to a good place, and then I could take all of those things and apply them to my own businesses. So so that's the long-term plan, and that's how all of it supports that. And that is helpful when you're making a lateral move, or like, doing something challenging, like, all right, I'm going to step up my kid responsibilities and my income at the same time. And it's
Superman.
And it's helpful to be like, all right, I can do this for a limited time, for this particular reason, etc. And that makes it much more doable, right, than getting overwhelmed with like, oh my goodness, am I going to have to do this forever? And you don't see how it's connecting to your goals. So that's my framework of like, all right, my overarching purpose is this, and that's how that leads, like all of three of those lead pretty much directly into my overarching purpose. Now, I have time set aside where 100% of my attention is still going to go to clients. This doesn't mean I'm not going to spend quality time with clients. Like, I'm going to do my prep time. I'm going to do the client conversation time. I'm going to do recap time. And so I always make sure there's like time boxed space where clients during the conversation and outside of that have 100% of my attention. But that's kind of like a known quantity. And a lot of the ways I also spread I think in terms of priority is on growth activities. Like, what am I going to do differently and better this week is really a lot of what I define my priorities as. And then everything else where it's like, okay, my clients like what I do. I deliver, I deliver a value. I don't have to make that a priority of things to change. So that's also another reason why, like, all right, that clients aren't a top priority. It's like, well, okay, they're not a top priority of the things I need to change, right?
So. And that's one of the things that's hard, is maintaining those things that don't need to change while also putting in the effort to change things that do. Because it's the there's a thing in my brain. My brain's not working this morning. Sorry. No, it's that idea of, keeping the plates spinning, right? And keeping the ones that are important spinning while experimenting with other things. To kind of, maximize and your efficiency and everything.
Well, and it's a matter of time boxing, right? And how much time are you going to spend doing what? And so you can do it either way. Like, if you have lots of regular appointments and you have a hard time investing in the growth of your business, then you can start with carving out pieces here or there for growth expansion. Or if you're coming at it the other angle, again, I think I mentioned in one of the videos, I'm very growth oriented, right? And so I like to give the first part of my planning to like what is going to make me grow, what is going to make my services better for other people, what's going to make me able to reach more people, etc. So I like the first part of that. But it's, again, just like time bucketing, right? So it doesn't have to conflict if I know I have sufficient time for my clients. I know exactly, like, all right, how much time do I need beforehand to prep? How much time, afterwards to make sure I understood and I can follow up for next time, etc. So yeah, like I don't really worry about that quite so much, at least in the case of like clients versus new initiatives, just because it's like, all right, I already have that time box and that structure and that system working for clients.
Well, and I think, you've as you've mentioned, being able to take the time that you would spend marketing your own services, right? That's the time you're taking. But I guess the point that I wanted to make is that for other people out there who aren't quite so good at it, or like me, you have to take something out if you're going
Yep.
to add something back in,
Yep.
right? And so you can't just say, well, I'm going to do this too, and I'm going to do this too, and I'm going to do this too, right? You have to say, okay, well, if I want to add in X, then I have to take out Y or something else that is equivalent to X. And that's hard, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, if you don't have services or appointment-based things, or if you have lots of discretionary time, the other way to do it is, I mean, just clearly prioritize and then don't work on anything else till you've finished X. And I think maybe that's a good tip to end up on, which is if you try and do like 6 things, you have like, six things of equal priority that you just shift between. You work a little bit on one, work a little bit on another. You don't end up getting to it will take you 6 times longer to complete something and move it off your plate. So you're keeping yourself in that state of, multitasking and task switching, etc., which is low productivity, versus if you have a clear priority, then and you work on something till you finish it, then you get that off your plate.
Yeah. And I am the worst at this. Well, I'm not the worst. I'm sure there's someone who's worse than me, but I'm not great at this. And so it's true. And it's something that I've started to really recognize as far as the more complex my life has gotten, the less I can sustain doing that, right? It's exhausting, number one, just having all of those things on your plate, the amount of mental load and clutter, right? Just of having unfinished items on a to-do list is pretty heavy. But also, even though I might, have thought in the past that I was being more effective by multitasking, and I was able to do it when there was only a couple of things, we all have limits, and recognizing what those limits are, I'm learning that.
Yep. Well, and there's a couple ways to do this. One is obviously just cutting down the number of things you're doing. Another is prioritizing. So you can want to do multiple things as long as the most important thing is getting done first.
Yep.
Every day. And that requires you to know a threshold for what is enough on that every day, that top priority. And we'll probably, go back into tomorrow. We can dive back into the outreach as one of the major goals for this year. Even if you need packages to sell people in the outreach too. So like that's the top priority. But like, all right, how are we gonna progress on the outreach goal? Specifically in terms of numbers and how that's going to be achieved, etc. So like cutting out things, prioritization, and the other thing is just defining things in a way that you can actually complete it that day. So like outreach, and this is where we'll get into this, tomorrow or something, is outreach in general is not a good priority because you can't finish outreach that day, right?
It's just
versus
an ongoing
the number,
thing.
like what are we hitting? And I think we were going for 30 or something,
35,
right? And so we can talk about, hitting that, but that is something that then you could complete. And if that is sufficient, then you can move on to the next thing. Now we're still planning to up that over time and see if we can ever get to 100 per day, which would be exciting. But the whole point of like 100 is it's so much that you really should be getting traction by them. And you should by trying to shoot way past the point, you should at least have found the point where it's like, this is enough outreach a day.
Yep. And for those who do get easily overwhelmed by all of these things, the way that I find it easiest to do is you've got 2 things to break down. You have within, for me, in this example, work, right? What is my priority within work? What is, A, B, and C, and then kind of look at your life in general, right? Because, work is not your life. Obviously, you have your mental health, your physical health. Last week when we were sick, physical health became a priority, right? There's, social life, there's other things. And so look at both of those, right? And say, okay, well, what are my priorities in life right now? And you don't have the time probably to be doing this every day, but occasionally just kind of checking in. Again, we have our weekly check-ins with each other and kind of on our own to see, okay, how did this week go? in various different aspects. And so just making sure that that is a regular thing so that you don't end up spending, so much time or, whatever on something that isn't actually a priority.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us. Again, if this has been helpful, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. So we go live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. So we'd love to have you with us, to jump on live, join the chat, and get your questions or comments responded to live. But until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a time.
Bye.